Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of UAE School Leaders with your host, Mohsin. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel and show your support. In today's episode, we have Mr. Martin, Ms. Rawan, and Mr. Christopher. We will be discussing what are EdTech programs and how they are important in this online learning era. What EdTech programs do schools use, and what is flipped and blended learning approach? During this distance learning period, EdTech programs are in high demand as it supports schools with teaching and learning. So let me start by asking Mr. Martin, what are EdTech programs and how are they so important in this current distance learning period?
So EdTech programs are platforms to facilitate learning, and they're used alongside our teaching practices, and they're integrated into the classroom. These programs give students access to many different platforms and to continue their learning online away from the classroom. And with the current situation, these EdTech programs have been of benefit to both the students and teachers to assist in us giving students a consistent and continuous education.
EdTech programs being a combination of technology and pedagogical practices that are aimed at enhancing learning. With the current climate and this current online learning era that we're faced with, they've become extremely important to have that all-important connection that takes place at school. So shifting that from a building to online, EdTech programs and EdTech in general has been the medium for that. So it's really helped us to facilitate this, and also it's helped us to kind of solve problems that were unheard of up until recently.
So first let me start by saying in a traditional classroom setting, it can be very difficult to accommodate a wide range of students' needs, and EdTech programs and solutions developed as methodologies and tools to give the ability to personalize instruction for each student and give the teacher the ability to mentor the student's progress more efficiently and individually. And also it gives us the ability to engage the students, grab their attention, and study independently. And of course, during the pandemic, it saved the education.
Mr. Christopher, what EdTech programs do you use in your school?
Currently in my school, we're using, we're quite specific in terms of the ongoing programs we're using. And before the pandemic, we had Quizlet, which was being used on, I'd say, more of a weekly basis for many teachers. And this really has helped to provide or strengthen the memory of facts for those kids, or computation, or whatever you want to call it, for that surface understanding. In English, math and science, English was used for learning vocabulary and spelling. Math, you had it for computation, for that surface understanding, and in science it was used for the remembering of key facts. And this has really helped to help us to gather data and information so that we can analyze and inform teaching going to the next stage. So Quizlet's been a highlight of the school this year. Of course, there are teachers who they have that flexibility of using their own programs. So Google Classroom's been something that's been used a lot as well. But generally, in our school, we've had that Quizlet for the classroom instruction and informing instruction, and we've also had the MAP program, which is the adaptive online tests that students take, and this has really helped to give us some raw data to work with inside the classroom. With this pandemic that's approached us, one of the most important online platforms has been Microsoft Teams. I mean, this has literally allowed us to shift that the school experience online, both in terms of lessons being done interactively, in terms of documentation being shared, collaboration with curriculum plans. So these are the kind of platforms that we're using at our school currently.
We use a variety of different platforms. So one of the main ones was, like Christopher said there, map testing. So we use map testing as well. But from that map test, the baselines, we get our data in, and then there's a program called ExactPath. And ExactPath can be used for maths, English, and science. But what's very good about this program is it builds an individual personalized path for each student. So every student gets a different path. So for maths, say one of the questions that were on was fractions, and they really struggled with this. That student didn't want to have fractions on their path. Along with that, we use TT Rockstars. TT Rockstars is another maths program. It's very good for it's a bit fun. It's more fun. The kids enjoy it. They build an avatar. They can compete against each other, and it's recalling their times tables and division facts. So they're two really good programs we used. Along with that, we've got Study Island, which you can link directly to what you've been doing in the classroom. You can assign assignments on that. Google Classroom, we use it in middle school, and that's our direct contact with the students. So the students upload every day their assignments onto that. So when we do what we do in the class in our live Zoom sessions, they take a picture and upload it. We also do quizzes on on Google Classroom, and the kids can do them on that, and it's directly linked to Google Classroom through Google Forms. So that's another excellent way. We've also got a grade book in there. So every assignment the kids undertake, it's directly uploaded onto the grade book, and we can assign it, and we can give feedback through that and comment, and you can do whole class discussions on that, or you can give individual and personalized comments to each kid, feedback.
Let me start by dividing these at four categories. First, we have something called learning management system and communication tools, and like tools for teachers to create their digital learning content. We have something to track the students' growth, and we have engaging resources, and each one fix or solve different problems. So first, the learning management system like Google Classroom and like Microsoft applications, there is Class Dojo and Edmodo and Schoology. They are so familiar, especially here in UAE and CISO. And I wanted to say that Class Dojo works for the young students. Edmodo maybe for the middle school, and Google Classroom fits the high school level, as well as Schoology and CISO. For the tools help teachers to create their digital lessons, I would say that EduPuzzle and Nearpod works a great role. And for tracking the students' growth, Exact Path and Achieve 3000 is the best. And for the resources, engaging resources, most of the schools here using IXL, which has resources for science, languages, social studies, and math, and covered K to 12, as well as Eureka, and one software called Moza Books. And I think one of my favorite tools that I noticed most of the teachers love to use in their school to improve their content delivery, called Powtoon, which is online tool that simplify process creating animated videos, and this helps create story-based lessons.
Achieve 3000 is the reading platform, and again, you can assign different tasks to the level and the ability the kid is at. Again, it's individualized to their ability, so you can set a different independent work for each student, or you can set a group task, and then along with that you can set up a challenge for like a 30-minute challenge, so the kids are getting on that platform and developing their reading skills. Another platform that's really good is actually Kahoot, and it's one that the kids love playing. It brings competition into the classroom, and the kids it's working out their puzzles quickly, and then their reflexes to see can they collect the right answer, and it just gets that little competition into the classroom, and it's a bit more fun for the kids as well. But that's a really good platform, and it's got a variety of different quizzes on that as well.
I think it's Rowan who mentioned about Seesaw, and that really powerful tool that it has to create online student portfolios. In my previous school, we used it throughout the whole year, and it was fantastic. Parents had the kind of camera inside of the classroom where they could see exactly what's going on with the students, and you had all of these different programs that you could embed into it, in these tools that you could embed into it. So you'd have students reading and practicing their fluency, and showing what they look like at the beginning of the year in their portfolio towards the end of the year, and how they've changed their intonation to copy the teacher, and how they're reading the particular story. And I feel that Seesaw itself is one of those powerful tools to really help enhance learning inside the classroom and outside the classroom as well.
So, Mr. Martin, what is flipped learning, and how will this help students when we return back to school?
Learning is it's learner centered. So the focus is more on the student and it's individualized instruction. So instead of it being in the classroom, your usual classroom instruction, it's to a whole group. Whereas flipped learning is more individual, one-to-one. You're speaking to that student and you're giving them that information, and then they bring it back into the classroom. This thing gives us a more dynamic classroom because the kids are bringing the information to you instead of you doing. You're more of a facilitator of the learning then, and it brings in classroom discussion and it gets them working together in groups, and it's just a lot more learner centered. And with the current situation, it's given that them students more independence and more accountability for their own learning. So I feel like when we return back into school, we'll see students that are more independent and they're bringing more knowledge into the classroom, whereas before they were a little bit more dependent on the teacher, I feel.
We all know that some students learn faster than the other, and I think flipped learning is exactly for those who's beyond. So the idea is in the flipped learning, we will do the opposite than we're having now. The students will be having the content at home. He has the time to write down his questions and his thoughts, to go to next day to the school and discuss it with the teacher and work on fixing the problems. And that's what's made it very special. And I think to have a flipped learning classroom, we need to have, of course, adopt resources such as videos, online worksheets, and gamification and application, and give them access to these resources at any time and any place. Of course, we need classroom management, we need devices, and of course, we need technology training is essential here. The technology training is the most powerful thing in the flipped classroom, and this what makes the difference. And after that, of course, the students will be having their own pace. They will learn their way. They will be self-paced learners and gain confidence and be ready to show the world their creativity.
The idea of flipped learning being something that's moved students or teaching from that whole group instruction to that individual instruction, and it really helps students in terms of that personalized learning aspect. But before we return back to school, I think as educators we really need to reflect on how this can facilitate and enhance the job at hand, and that's developing these students. So accepting that there are limitations and focusing on the strengths of flipped learning, I think it will really be able to enhance what we're doing at the schools.
Of course, we have to continue the blended learning approach. We have less choice now, and the blended learning becomes the new norm now. Of course, online learning takes place remotely and it's completely self-directed, but the blended learning mixes online learning and face-to-face interaction, and that's exactly what we need when we return back to the schools.
Great. So leading on to my final question, do you think a blended learning approach will support students and even further? And is that something all schools should do when they return back?
So long as we kind of concentrate on those strengths and those limitations of blended learning, and that being kind of that traditional interactivity between the teacher and answering questions, answering questions between this teacher and the students, then I believe that is something that all schools should really kind of take advantage of. And like we said, this pandemic has only exposed that strength of online learning, and it's really brought it to the forefront of education today. Having said that, it's still really important that the quality of what we are choosing, the quality of the programs, the instructions that we're giving, it's not just a case of throwing it out there. It needs to be thought through. Things need to be, taken into consideration. Because PowerPoint presentations, or you add a voice where a voice shouldn't be, it becomes difficult for the student to understand. And, you can spend hours on it, but without the correct know-how in how it's going to be received by the students, it's going to be a waste of time, because you're only going to have 30, 40 students come back to you and say to you, teacher, I still don't understand, what's being said in that PowerPoint presentation. Likewise with videos, depending on how we sequence them, we have to understand that it's not the same as explaining something in the classroom where a student can put up his hand and say, can you just, say that again, or say that in a different way? All of these different things, I think we're still in the learning process. of implementing it in schools at the moment. And although I feel that it's something that all schools should take advantage of, I feel it's something that we should take our time with, and so we can get the quality out of it and really focus on that point of adaptive learning. You know, this artificial intelligence that we have nowadays with these programs, it's very powerful, and it can cut a teacher's workload literally down to a second. You can get instant results from a weekly quiz. You know, if you've got 100 students and you, instead of taking them home at the weekend to mark them off, you know, you can get the instant inside the classroom, so long as everyone has devices. So really, you know, harnessing the power of this technology is something that every school should consider, and really think of how you can utilize your resources in the most powerful way.
Yeah, I feel like, so at the moment, we do post everything the week at the beginning of the week, so the students have access to it. Previously, we used to do it the opposite way. After the end of the week of lessons, we'd post it up so the kids could go back and review it. Whereas now they can access it before they actually go into that lesson. So it's giving them that opportunity to look at the work themselves first, and then think, okay, I don't understand this point, or I have a question on this topic. And they're bringing the questions to you in the classroom. So I feel like, yeah, blended learning is giving them that opportunity to be more accountable, be more independent in their own learning. And then when they do come back into the classroom setting, so into our Zoom sessions at the minute, they've got the questions for you of their misunderstandings, or what they feel they need to get more out of in that lesson. And I feel like it's leading to more improvements and higher engagement in their own lessons and in their own learning. And I feel like, yeah, definitely the blended learning approach is something that needs to be in all schools. But again, it has to be implemented in the correct way and not rushed as well, yeah.
The importance of blended learning, and how we have to deal with it as something essential in our schools. I think engage the students is the trick. Engage the students is the first thing we have to take under consideration, and encourage them to adapt the environment of the technology. Technology is not a luxury, it's not a plus anymore. Technology is something will help us to improve and to develop our 21st century skills, and to develop our chance to fit in the future job.
In terms of, you know, harnessing the power of blended learning, I really do think that schools should engage in the research that's out there, and try and, you know, find out what works best for their context and become risk takers, you know, but those risks that have the minimal impact if they don't go very well. So teachers and administration alike should feel empowered to kind of, you know, risk trying out something new with a particular program or piece of technology. So I just really think that it's important that we always that schools in general are created or create that culture of risk taking, so that we can see what works best for our school. And I think at the end of the day, you know, we will always rely on the human element of education to add value.
So thank you to our lovely guests for joining me today. It has been an absolute pleasure. Please share the video, like and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.